Well, war is a part of politics, and I completely agree with Harley Schlanger, who just spoke that it was being used as a tool for mostly for achieving such aims as getting access to resources or depopulating certain territories or destroying economies or even civilizations. And unfortunately, lately we see a great increase in the amount of wars. Some of them are quite rapid time-wise. Some of them are taking years and years. But we see the destruction that was brought to Libya, for instance, that was once, and let's say just recently, that was a flourishing state with developed social policy and quite developed economy and ambition for establishing a new Pan-African system that would not depend on colonial powers and that would allow for creation of own sovereign economic foundations, let's put it that way. And we saw, unfortunately, quite a lot of examples when civil wars were ignited and initiated in order to once again divide and conquer and achieve the goals of receiving the access to resources. But now the wars have also transitioned and they have transformed into many other shapes, including informational wars, when psychological warfare becomes one of the key issues. And sometimes it serves as a foundation for physical or military operations, but sometimes it just stays at that level. Sometimes it just stays at that level, and it destroys societies from the very inside. So I think it's one of the aspects that is also worth talking about today, and I see that there are quite a lot of experts who could elaborate on this even more. Yes, those attacks on the very core, the attacks on the value systems, the attacks on things that used to be considered simple, the attacks through social media, through traditional media, basically propaganda that is integrated into movies and various kinds of cultural content and content that is supposed to be neutral.
Yeah.
All this creates a great confusion in people's minds, and it makes them lose their ethics. It makes them lose their moral values. It makes them disorientate in simple things and, generally speaking, in living their lives, right? Because when we see quite a lot of those examples, and I mean starting from destruction of family values and various perversions and attacks within the religious context, and religion being used as one of the manipulation tools as well to a great extent. And when we see the COVID and the example of how panic was basically implanted into people's mindset, and this also allowed for increasing control tremendously, especially when we're talking about the countries in Europe. So the major cleanup within the civil society, the various kinds of activists and the kind of people that used to be public and voicing their critical opinions, it all was happening during the pandemic, when everyone was made to wear masks and stay at home, and various kinds of protests that were attempted to take place in countries like Germany and Austria and many others, they were just canceled, and the people who were taking part in organizing such critical events, they were, some of them were imprisoned, arrested, or else everything was done for them to lose their position in the society, in some cases jobs, in some cases access to finance and whatsoever else. So of course it's a very, it could be perceived as quite a controversial topic, yet at the same time we see that the level of consent and the level of, let's say, civil obedience, not in a good way, in Europe has changed a lot after the pandemic, because it was On top of everything else, it was a major psychological war against its own population, aimed to set additional means of control. But once the war in Ukraine started, once it was taken to a new level, everyone kind of forgot about it. And what is quite sad is that all of the corruption scandals around it also were not really discussed as they should have been, and investigations have not really achieved the results of pointing out who was guilty and applying the punishment to them. But in any case, the point I'm trying to make here is that the psychological warfare is even more dangerous because it does have an effect on people, on how they raise their children, and it has this generational effect that leads to certain deformations. And we definitely could see this happening. We definitely could see this happening in Ukraine, and we could see this happening in many countries in Africa, for example, in Rwanda and many other ones. And unfortunately, we're still observing quite a lot of examples of bully in order to control and conquer and make people do what they don't really want to do. Thank you. Yes, I think that one of the key reasons is that the current economic system, the global economic system, is quite deformed and disbalanced. And for that reason, every now and then, wars are also needed, like big world or global wars are needed to reset the economy. Okay. That was the case during the World War II. That was the case during the World War I. And many of these conflicts, on the one hand, they do have very clear beneficiaries, and on the other hand, they do allow to reset the economy. And this is something that Europe at the moment, let's say the European Union, is in desperate need for, to reset and restart its economy, writing off all of the policy mistakes to the war that forgives everything, right? So when the system is designed and structured like this, specifically those systematic issues are leading to the need of wars. Big wars for global resets or smaller ones in order to achieve local economic goals or more of tactical ones or midterm ones. So what really needs some kind of redesign and rethinking in terms of those systematic issues is the economic system and the way countries trade with each other and the way those international affairs are all arranged. Because it's okay to have interests and it's okay to be willing to get resources when you have none. But it's not okay to set up the whole manipulation system around it, saying that you're bringing democracy to some place when you don't even practice democracy yourself, and when people on the land maybe don't even need that or don't need that model of democracy or whatsoever else the nice sounding purpose is that is used to manipulate and divide and conquer, right? So I think that once the international relations are restructured in terms of financial systems and economy, then it would be only acceptable to achieve economic goals through negotiations, through trade, and through a more mutually beneficial dialogue. But of course, it takes two to tango, and since we still have, I mean, on the one hand, we have the oppressor, on the other hand, we have the victim. But it's valid for both parties that they have, the key role in the process. What I mean by this is that the countries that are more victims in terms of, being a part of the system dominated by the hegemon, or this can be, there could be different terms used for this. But it is important to change the behavior patterns on the other side as well. And I mean, China has been demonstrating that. India has been demonstrating flexibility, but still achieving its goals. Turkey has become a regional power because it was trying to use the conflicts between the global powers and their interest for their own benefit. And they have been in, let's say, working relations with conflicting parties as well, which allowed them to pursue their own interests. Russia has been resisting the pressure that has been all over the place for several years during this period of time when we are basically at war with all the NATO countries and previously as well. So this kind of patterns, persistent, resistant, and the ones that allow to promote own interests, I think they are a way forward to creation of a more balanced and just economic system in the first place. And then international affairs system that would not fall into those manipulation traps and would allow for use of more of negotiations, more of trade deals, more of balanced interest models than the current system that allowed to do things in the dark because people were either not knowing or else they were accepting the rules of the bad game.
Mm-hmm.